Being the property manager at Phoenix Towers, you guys have been very open for feedback and suggestions that were received on behalf of the residents there. I think this proposal as a whole has a lot of positives in it. The interlining is one thing that I think is a huge positive step forward for the transit system here. I had the transit system described to me as the circulatory system of a city. And I kind of agreed with it. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective, and I agree with it. I have some concerns about the routes still that exist. The biggest one that I hear from the residents at the towers is the return trip is going to be double or triple the amount of time. Again, I think the proposal has a lot of positives. I think there's some negatives. In speaking to people within the community, and I've had random people come up to me and address that they're not happy, that they're not satisfied with it. I understand that change is a necessity. The concern that I have about the routes proposal as it stands now is that there seems to be a lot of people that are getting left on the side of the road, figuratively and literally. I think there's some positives in here. Like I said, I would ask that you guys vote down the proposal as it stands now. I think there's some positives that you guys can take out of it. I think the interlining is a big step in the right direction. I think the green line that was proposed to go between the two main hubs are huge positives for within the community. If it's an all or nothing, I unfortunately have to say that I don't think that it should be approved as proposed now. In talking with the transit company that you guys had worked with to develop the plan, they said that this needs to be customized to the individual cities, that they are not as feet on the ground as you guys are. And I think that's the step that Connect Transit should take, is the feedback that has been provided, which I think you guys have done a good job, including the green or the gold line that was rolled out recently within the last week. I still think you're just not quite there yet. There's a little bit more opportunity, I think, for this to be improved, to make this more inclusive to the current riders. It's became evidently clear to me that the transportation system is so important, and seeing people get up here and talk, getting out of their comfort zone. This is quite intimidating to get up and talk in front of a board of people, and to see some of the people that I have, having attended so many of these, it shows me how much people truly care. And I think that's a takeaway that you guys should have of it. So if you have to vote on the entire proposal as it stands now, I would suggest that you vote no for the proposal. If there are ways that you can vote to approve certain sections of it, I think that's what I would recommend. Obviously, I'm not on the board, and they've entrusted you guys as trustees of the circulatory system of Bloomington Normal. And I ask that you guys please do the right thing for your current riders. You've got one in the bush now with the riders you have. My concern is that Connect Transit is going to be hurt long-term, and therefore hurt the ridership as a whole as you guys are pursuing the two in the bush as opposed to the one you have now. So again, I suggest right now that I would recommend a no vote with some of these things can be implemented in a different structure, because I do see the transportation system in this city does need updating. But culturally, I don't think we're there for Chicago style, Houston style, which is the example that I've heard bantered around about a lot of Houston. We're just not there culturally from a transportation system. I think we can get there, and I think I have faith in you guys doing the right thing for the system. Everybody that's here in this room wants the same thing, which is a functioning, successful transit system, as it shows how important it is to them. So thank you for your time, and good luck on your vote.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to consent agenda. And in the consent agenda, it has the minutes from the budget work session that we had in March, as well as the March regular meeting, disbursements, financial reports for March, monthly stats, ridership data. And I will take any motion on that, and we can.
Second.
I have some questions.
Yes, yeah.
I noticed the purchase of the bus shelters. I noticed the purchase of the bus shelters. I'm excited to see that. I think it's a great step forward. I wondered what sort of timeline we're looking at actually seeing some of those shelters on the street.
We're looking to contract to get them installed, assembled and installed, so we're hoping within the next month or so.
Also in disbursements, there's a $5,000 expenditure for Remix software. I wondered what that was.
Remix software is the software we utilize to test out new routes. It's what we use to plan out the gold route. It takes in demographic data from the area and allows us to plot out routes with full coverage and that type of thing, so.
And finally, the New Flyer bus parts. I just wondered if we were building inventory, if we actually had repairs. I did notice that later in the statistical report that the miles between major mechanical system failures is way down. Wondered if that was a result of adding new buses to the fleet, but was also curious about the parts we're buying for the new buses.
I'm not entirely sure exactly what those parts are, but as part of preventative maintenance, we do need to purchase parts, and those buses are accumulating miles, so we do have to spend some money on parts for them.
Okay, thank you.
Bill?
Yes.
On the ridership report, I noticed that our fixed ridership is down, and as I recall, we thought that perhaps the warmer fall last year was the reason for the ISU ridership being down, and now we also see that the number of detours and repair has influenced it. What is being projected for the future relative to ISU, and do we have a good plan of where the next set of detours are going to be?
Well, the detours happen as they happen. We usually find out about them with a very short lead time. We're still being hit by low gas prices. That is having an effect. We did see ridership, the ridership decline slow quite a bit in the third quarter, and we're looking at, right now, ridership getting closer to a flat stage. Once again, this points to when you have a system that isn't necessarily as convenient or frequent, when the choice riders will depart for their cars and for other ways to get around when gas prices go down. So gas prices are still way down, and we're still seeing some impact from that.
Okay, thank you.
And this is John Bowman. I had
Yeah.
a couple things from the consent agenda. First of all, on the decrease in ridership, one thing I didn't see in the analysis was the impact of the discontinuation of State Farm's Ride to Work program. I'm not sure what the extent of that impact is, but anecdotally, I've noted fewer riders from State Farm on the bus routes that I've ridden that normally would be ridden by those folks. So I think there has been an impact from that as well. And I'd like to see us have an outreach to State Farm to try and encourage that ridership to come back to Connect. I think that there might be ways to do that, and I'd like to see us explore that. From the numbers, just a couple things. There were two entries under Chris Wold for due subscriptions for an identical $870 amount. I just wanted to make sure that's not a duplicate payment. And then I noticed generally the category of computer and office supplies were at 106.4% of our annual budget. In this current period, the total is $13,291.78. So, and I noted that's one of the areas that's increasing in the budget, but I just wanted to comment on that, make note, and question, I guess, is that reflective of why we're increasing that category in the new budget?
Okay, the items for Chris Wold are tuition reimbursements, so it's two classes but the same price. And the other item was
The office supplies.
It was
office
that
supplies.
category,
Yeah,
computer and office supplies, it's combined.
yeah.
And one of those software items, I think the Remix software was one of those expenses that roll into that 13,000 plus.
Yeah, and it as we expand our technology platforms and the like, there are some increased maintenance costs with those.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other? Have a motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Pass, thank you. Old business.
There is no old business?
All right. New business?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we take number 3 and move that to the top of the list for the people that are here tonight to hear us talk about the route restructuring.
Okay. All right. We'll move that up.
And then I would also make a motion to approve those routes.
I second that.
I'm sorry?
Don't you need a second to move that up?
Do we need a motion to?
Order.
Yeah, you'll need a motion to move it up, but is yours one whole motion, or are you making
No,
two?
I'm making two motions, one to move it up.
Okay, so then we need
Okay.
a second.
I second it.
Okay, now a vote.
Any discussion, or all those in favor of moving three
Aye.
after one?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.
Nay.
Okay.
All right, then I would go ahead and make a motion to approve the route restructuring as well.
I'll second that.
Okay.
And I have some comments.
Okay. All right.
I plan to cast a yes vote for these changes. I'm very comfortable doing so for a number of reasons, and I hope the board will indulge me as I talk about some of these reasons. Many of the facts and figures that I'll cite were gathered from Connect Transit staff, and I want to thank them for tracking down this information, some of it as late as today. And these reasons are in no particular order. Sunday service. This will bring Sunday service to our system. This is a long-standing request in this community and something that I think any transit service needs. And I'm excited about bringing Sunday service to the community. Nelson Nygaard's track record. This is not the first time the consultant that helped us with the comprehensive operational analysis and the new routes, this is not the first time they've undertaken a route restructuring project in a community. Some of those communities that they've worked in the past have been Mankato, Minnesota, with a 50% plus ridership increase in 1 year, Huntsville, Alabama, with a 20% ridership increase in a year, Ithaca, New York, 14% the first year and a 14% in the second year of ridership after the routes were restructured, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, a 19% ridership increase in 9 months, and Springfield, Massachusetts, a 12% ridership increase in 1 year. In Bloomington Normal, we have no reason to expect different results with the principles applied by Nelson Nygaard. We're talking about a system strengthened by an 18 to 19% increase in predicted ridership in 12 to 24 months in Bloomington Normal. That's an additional 400,000 rides. The benefits are significant, but I've also been assured by staff, and I believe there's a strong, deep commitment to accommodate those riders in Southwest Bloomington and North Normal to help them get to the nearest bus stop. Increased frequency. We've talked a lot about where the buses are going, but not a lot about how often those buses are going to be going by locations. I believe being able to catch all of Connect Transit's buses on the half hour at peak times and 15-minute service on the green all day long is a huge positive change. There could be more transfers for some folks, but I believe that everyone will get to their destination more quickly. We're talking about some increased employment as well. Connect Transit will hire an additional 22 bus drivers, 3 maintenance employees, 2 dispatchers, 2 operations supervisors, and 1 trainer to make the new service possible. I think this is a positive development for the ATU, as 27 of these new 30 employees will be represented by the ATU. Connect Transit outreach and customer engagement. I think they've done an excellent job. Efforts began in October. There have been 14 internal and external listening sessions. 9 of those were public listening sessions. And then there was last night's public hearing, which was the last step in this outreach process before the vote tonight. Connect Transit staff has held 27 individual meetings with businesses and organizations in the community. And I also want to thank the staff for the above and beyond commitment they've exhibited through this process, and I want to thank Bloomington Alderman Karen Schmidt, Scott Black, David Sage, Amelia Burgess for their questions and input, and I want to thank Town Council Member Kathleen Lorenz for her involvement as well. I think all the questions and concerns and input helped strengthen this process. I think we'll be looking at a more efficient use of taxpayer dollars. Connect Transit utilizes state and federal dollars to provide service. While Bloomington and Normal have been generous in providing past capital funding, the system is now getting sales tax dollars for operating expenses. These new routes are a better use of those tax dollars. I think Connect Transit has exhibited a willingness to adapt. There have been adjustments along the way. The Olive Route and the Gold Route are examples of that. We've also heard from Connect Transit management who have pledged to address the first mile, last mile issue in North Normal and Southwest Bloomington. I believe a majority of the board wants to see a sensible solution to serve these customers, and as a board member, and I think I can speak for some other board members as well, we'll hold the staff accountable for a solution, be that Uber and taxi service or some other solution after the pilot project. One of the things we haven't talked much about through this process is the ability of transit to lead to positive land use practices. I believe there's very little argument about community sprawl. It's not good. It costs more to provide water, sewer, solid waste, police, fire, and EMS service to areas on the periphery of this community. transit is no different. I'm very sympathetic to the customers who may have to utilize some of the first mile, last mile services. However, I'm also hopeful this sends a message to developers to focus on the community's core, to consider infilling areas in the heart of our community, and to think about transit-oriented development. Helping to spur increased transit-oriented development is important to our community, and I think can bring about positive economic benefits to the community as well. And I guess finally, I would say this isn't the end. This is the beginning of another process. There have been tweaks to the system in the past, but a route overhaul of this nature has not taken place in this community. And it's time. This community has changed. It's not the same as it was 5 or 10 or 40 years ago. It's time for a route restructure for Bloomington Normal as it exists today. And time for a route structure that can be examined and tweaked in the future. Just because there haven't been many changes in the past doesn't mean we can't continue to look at this system and make adjustments as we move forward. It's not going to be chiseled in stone. This is something we're going to continue to monitor and examine as we move forward. So those are some of the reasons I'm voting in favor of this restructuring. I think a yes vote is a vote for Sunday service. It's a vote for efficient use of tax dollars, a vote for positive land use practices, a vote for increased frequency, and a vote for increased ridership, and I want to support all those things. And I hope my fellow board members will follow me with a yes vote. And thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
I'll make a comment.
Yeah, right.
First I want to, thanks to our writers, our staff, and those who attended the public meetings and last night's public hearing. I want you to know that I heard all of what all you said. When the plan was released, I had concerns. Concern one was the large neighborhoods on the west side of Bloomington left without bus service. Concern two was the loss of service to Southwest Bloomington and North Normal. And the third concern was the first mile, last mile solution. However, what bothers me far more than any of these logistical concerns is the perception that Connect Transit has inadvertently created, the perception that we don't care about you and that our decision has already been made. I understand why the perception exists. Holding the public hearing the night before the vote was poor planning. It was not our intention to make riders feel like their opinions don't matter. Solutions have been presented for two of my three concerns. They include the creation of the Gold Route to serve West Bloomington, and I can live with the loss of service to Southwest Bloomington and North Normal in order to achieve the bigger goal to provide more frequent service to the community as a whole. So although I support the plan in principle, I believe we should postpone this vote until next month's meeting. Doing so would give us time to let riders know about changes to the original plan, get definite answers on the first mile, last mile, and take into account the comments we heard from our riders last night. I don't think that taking an additional month to accomplish these goals is asking too much. Let's take the time needed to get this right.
Hold on, there we go. How about that? For those of you that know me, I haven't sat up here before. I used to sit in Bloomington a lot, so I know how their microphones work. I think Ryan's comments really are in line with the motion that I'd like to make, which is to table this vote until our board meeting, which is upcoming, based on my notes, on May 24th. So I'll make that motion to table this item until May 24th.
Second.
We already have
a motion on the floor.
a motion on the floor
Approve it as is.
to approve.
Mr. Chairman, a motion to table, you can make a motion to table a motion after the original has been made.
Okay.
Typically, a motion to table is not debatable, but you can, as the presiding officer, you can allow some debate, but under Robert's rules, it's typically not a debatable motion. But you can go ahead, once a motion is on the table, have a motion to table. It is allowed.
Okay. Well, we can have an opportunity to debate.
Yeah, I think you can have some discussion.
We can have some discussion on that motion to
So
delay.
perhaps I'll just provide a rationale for the motion if I could. I agree with the comments that have been made. I have gratitude for the work that has been done, and I definitely have gratitude for all of the input that's been received. The goal in making this motion is not to vote no on this proposal. The goal in making this motion is to say not yet to this proposal. And I can honestly say that I understand what we're going to hear in the debate is going to be a urgency to get this stood up so that it can be in place by August. And I understand always there is urgency in what we do. But when it comes down to matters like this, I think that it's prudent to take an additional 3 weeks, and here's why. I have seen an enormous amount of progress be made in the last month on this. And if we were able to make the same amount of progress in the next 3 weeks that we've made in the last month, then I think we'd be saying yes to a proposal that's a bit more in line with where this community is at right now. So a couple of issues that still appear to be outstanding. Well, let me start by saying the issues that we've made progress on, many of them have been noted, whether from our audience members tonight or from folks up here, but we've made a couple of major route modifications that will provide better service to folks in Phoenix Towers. We provided better service to Broman Healthcare and to some of the adjacent buildings there. We have made some progress with regard to West Bloomington with an entire route, really, that's been stood up in just the last week. I know that there is always a sense of urgency, but one thing other that I know is that as we're all very busy people, and we've had a lot of folks get really engaged in this work in the last week. I know we've been talking about this since October, and I wish we'd had you all engaged in October, but I understand that it doesn't always work that way. So I think my ask would be of everyone is let's work as hard as we can in the next 3 weeks, as we have in the last couple weeks, about building consensus around what's happening here. And I plan to vote yes for this route restructure when we have a proposal that I truly feel represents all the progress that can be made. And the last thing I'd say is on the first mile, last mile, I think that that's an important piece of this for folks in South Bloomington and North Normal. I had that feeling a month ago. That didn't make as much progress for a couple of different reasons, and I think it's most prudent to have the options for that laid out. And I'm not saying we may still have to vote on this without that solution in place. I understand that. But I'd like to see more work on those options before we go ahead and take this vote. So thank you for the time. Those are the reasons for the motion that I've made tonight. Thank you.
Bill? Wanted to comment on the motion to delay. I certainly hear you and understand, because there's been a phenomenal amount of communication and contact and input from the public as well as the exemplary work done by the staff. However, I don't necessarily feel that a delay on this motion that's before us today to approve the plan is appropriate. We can move forward, and it doesn't preclude continuing to do the work. In fact, there is a commitment from our general manager and myself as a board member make that commitment that we will continue to do the work that's necessary to resolve as many of the issues as possible. But I think that the word urgency, I would not necessarily say is the appropriate one, but I think that it is time to move forward with the basic crux of this. This is a comprehensive, and it was a very comprehensive, long process. And as one who's observed and been aware of the bus service in Bloomington Normal since the 70s, this is, I believe, the first time we've ever had such a comprehensive look. And it is time, perhaps it's overdue, that we move this forward, but that we commit to all of you and to the other potential riders and riders in our communities that we will eventually resolve the remaining differences.
I'd like to make a comment. I've been on this board, I think, the longest of any of the members currently, and it became obvious very soon after I joined the board that something like this was badly needed. So this did not just start in October. It was part of the interview process when we hired the general manager. It was one of my biggest concerns that was mentioned in that process. Shortly after that, there was a not very well considered attempt to make a redesign of some of the routes. But this has been something that we've been thinking about before the official process began in October. The objection I would have to postponing it is that it would give us less time to do all of the things that we need to do, print route maps, publicize the changes, and everything else before students return in August. So I think that given the extraordinary care that was done in doing data, both qualitative and quantitative, the experience of the consultants that we worked with, the numerous listening sessions, and the entire process that Mike McCurdy mentioned in his statement, I think that the due diligence has been extraordinary. I couldn't be more happy with it, and it doesn't mean that we can't dot some I's or cross some T's as we are getting ready to actually put this out on the street in August.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a few comments in support of the motion to table. But once again, I want to express appreciation to the general manager and all the staff who have done a great deal of work. But I think it's important to point out that it's literally just in the last 2 to 3 weeks that because of what they've heard, they brought forward the Gold Line, which we see as a very positive move. And then there is still this Uber contract and what might be that ultimate cost. I know as I've spoken with 3 of our aldermen who represent the west side of Bloomington, Alderman Sage, Black, and Schmidt, all of them had, prior to the presentation here just last week, significant concerns about the lack of coverage. Once again, they're very pleased and appreciative of what has come forward on the Gold Line and then the announcement of the Uber. But as indicated by Trustee McDade, what we have found too is sometimes when new information comes out, at the last minute, so to speak, a small delay even can really just be a small sacrifice. But what it does help do is help ensure that any questions that there might be, especially in the last minute changes, all those answers can be given. So with a 3-week delay, I think that would go to better help all those who are going to be most impacted, especially in West Bloomington, to better understand what these changes are, how it'll impact them, and then hopefully too, what will be the ultimate cost and the final subsidy on the contract for the first mile, last mile, which again, we see as a very positive. So in behalf of especially those 3 aldermen, and I'd like to just endorse and feel like a 3-week delay would be a small sacrifice to help ensure that there's good information that will be disseminated to all those who have a desire to better understand these last-minute changes. Thank you.
Mr. Bowman, did you want to weigh in? I didn't want to.
John?
John Bowman, do you?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you for letting me speak. I also would like to see some additional details driven out regarding the new route structure, and for that reason, I would be in favor of tabling until our next scheduled board meeting. I think that the folks who preceded me are correct. There's been a lot of work done, and I appreciate that work. But I think we still have some work to do to make our writing public feel more comfortable with the proposed changes. One of the things that I've heard mentioned by riders is the lack of a timetable or schedules to really understand how these routes would impact them. If I'm riding a route and I have to make a transfer, but I'm standing on street for that transfer for 20 minutes between buses, that may not be very convenient or in winter even comfortable. So I think those kinds of details can be driven out. I would like to see a more definite cost structure around exactly what all of this is going to cost, so that we could understand from an economic perspective the viability of what's actually been proposed here. And I think on the areas that are losing service, that we don't go far enough, frankly, in the coverage area for the proposed replacement service. And again, those are details that I think could be driven out with an additional 3 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Art?
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of quick comments. Given the fact that it looks like 3 of the 7 voting board members are not quite comfortable making a final decision tonight, I personally don't see that a 3-week delay is going to be problematic, and it probably makes some sense to delay this. I think, in principle and by and large, I personally am supportive of the proposed route change, but I think certainly it sounds like there's a few additional details that need to be flushed out. I would suggest that if the motion to table is approved, it would behoove you to have a conversation to outline exactly what those, what the 3 board members who would like, what exactly that they would like, additional information they would like pulled together in that amount of time, and some other potential solutions they'd like to have explored. So in my opinion, I think a 3-week delay is probably in this case prudent, and I don't see it being harmful. This is a major decision of this board. It's obviously been in the works for a long time, and I understand those that are making the ultimate decision, the voting board members, they need to be comfortable with the direction we're going, and if 3 of the 7 feel that an additional 3 weeks would elevate their comfort level, then my suggestion is I think it's a reasonable request.
Thank you. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
I don't know exactly what will be gained by the additional 3 weeks. I see this as an ongoing process. I don't see it as a sort of the routes are implemented and then we move on to, or the routes are approved and then it ends. It's an ongoing process. So riders on the west side are going to have listening sessions and additional educational sessions to understand how those routes are going to be implemented. There's going to be plenty of time, I believe, to make the riding public comfortable with these changes between now and August. So I guess I would say that I'm not in favor of tabling it at this point. So thank you. And I guess one question. I guess what would Andrew maybe can speak to some of the educational sessions that are planned, provided the process moves forward tonight, and into the future in terms of educating the riding public, and maybe speak to what a 3-week delay might do to the process.
Yes, since October of 2015, we have had 8 public listening sessions. We've had 1 public hearing. We've had 5 internal listening sessions and meetings. We've also had 27 meetings throughout the community with individual businesses and organizations. What we heard in the public hearing yesterday was just a reiteration of concerns we had heard before. Some of them in the beginning relating to service on Washington Street, which is in place with the Gold Route. In terms of things left to do, all I am aware of that we still have to do is complete the first mile, last mile piece of this, something that came up in mid-April, so we really have not had a lot of time. We have talked about things like Uber. I will say nothing is set right now, and in fact, we staff at Connect just had a meeting with our union representatives this afternoon to discuss other options as well. The one thing we have done is committed to having that solution in place, and I think the performance of our team for the last several years would give people confidence that if we say that we are committed to making sure that happens, that will happen. One of the things that we built into this was enough time to properly educate the community, to properly educate our staff, and also to bring on board the individuals that we will need to be able to provide things like Sunday service. 3 months is enough time to do that. 2 months is making it very, very tight and, possibly causing us to commit a disservice to the community by not being able to properly educate them to all the changes and show everybody how to use the newly revised system. We have a great deal of outreach that is planned, and once the council votes yes on that, if they vote yes, or not the council, the board, then we will be able to put those plans in place. The one thing we have not done, because this is not set in stone, it is not a done deal, we haven't pre-printed everything. We haven't put everything in place expecting that we're going to get that yes vote. We have taken public comment right up until the end. We have made changes right up until the end, not because we were doing this on a last-minute basis, because we are very responsive to citizens in the community who came to us at the last minute. If the board chooses to delay this, it will put a great strain on transit system staff. We will, of course, because, being team players, we will do what the board asks of us, but we will do our best to put everything in place. But at the same time, it is not optimal. There is a great possibility that there could be some gaps, and we are very fearful that if this plan is approved and we don't have enough time to roll it out properly, some people will be even more upset by some of the changes because we haven't been able to properly educate the community on it. So if the board chooses to table this for 3 weeks, it's going to be problematic. I'm not going to say that it's impossible, but at the same time, as far as I know, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the only outstanding issue is the first mile, last mile, and we will work on that and get it in place by the August rollout.
Bill?
Yes, Judy?
Actually, I would like to just echo the comments of Mr. McCurdy and Mr. Johnson, and that is to delay this by 3 weeks. This is a process. This is the first step in a very important process. This board and this general manager have made a commitment, as well as to continue to work with the staff who brought us to this point. I'm confident that if we start the process and start moving that forward, that the remaining pieces, and as already been stated, there appears to be just one piece, will in fact be satisfactorily worked into this going forward.
Yes, Ryan?
I agree with what a lot is being said up here, but I guess my concern is the first mile, last mile is something we've got to work out, but there's also other issues that the public is not aware of. For example, Gold Route, which I heard about on Thursday, we talked about that a little bit last night, but I would say a lot of the people in the crowd was not aware of that Gold Route until we discussed that last night. To me, stuff like that, knowing the routes, making sure they understand that, it will just give them, I believe if we explain this to them and they understand it, it'll give us advocates for this plan instead of people that don't know. If you don't know about something, you're naturally not going to be in favor of it and you're going to be concerned about it. We don't like change. I don't like change. But if we let them know about these types of plans, these changes in the routes. Another example that I would maybe say, the public hearing minutes came out this afternoon. Let's get those out into the public and let people see it, see that kind of stuff. And maybe if they read from one of their friends that rides the bus of something that they didn't think about, that maybe just puts their mind at ease because they heard about it and the answer was given to that solution. It might get people to buy into this. And not even just buy into it, I'm not looking for buy-in, but just to put people at ease that ride our buses, understand this process, because it is hard to understand from time to time.
Yeah, and I agree. Change is very hard. Unfortunately, I was not able to be here physically present last night, but I did watch the entire hearing on my laptop. some of the comments that were made in terms of the public input relative to things that were thought to not be available were in fact available. So I think that this education process, whether we start talking about the new gold route today or 3 weeks from now, it's only going to be meaningful and really be taken in, so to speak, when it becomes a reality. Because a lot of the things we've been talking about for several months through the listening sessions and through the other opportunities for public input have been in place and have been resolutions that came as a surprise as I watched last night. So I think that that education process is very, very important, and it's something that we will take and we need to take very seriously and have enough time to do it. But I don't think that that really begins until the reality that this is it is in front of them.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would agree with what Judy said, and I would also, I guess, based on what Andrew said in terms of the 3 weeks, is that I think those 3 weeks give this route implementation the time it needs and the best chance of success. So if we're hearing that we need the 3 months and simply delaying it makes it harder for staff and management to implement the route changes, then I would say, let's move forward and give this route restructuring process as much chance as possible of being successful, and as much time as needed as to make it successful. Thank you.
Any other comments on this?
Well, I just have one. This is John Bowman again, but one of the things that I heard in the public comments last night, and I listened to those as well remotely, is a certain lack of trust, I guess, in the message that's been brought forward by Connect to this point. I think an additional 3 weeks would give us a chance to address that, and as I said earlier, to provide additional detail that would let people be more informed about the actual on-street effects of the new route structure. And that's my comment.
And Mr. Chairman, I have one more comment. I guess I would say that we have 3 months to do that.
I would also say that if we're trying to be able to envision the on-street performance, there's no way to do that until we have on-street performance. So there are going to be those who are against the proposal because it would be inconvenient for them or their daily patterns. But we're not going to know we'll never know how to make the changes that we need to until we actually see some of the performance. In the process here, we've got to print maps, we've got to print timetables, we've got to move some bus stop signs, we've got to see how the system operates for a few weeks before the population of the metropolitan area grows by 20% when all the students come back from summer, to work out any bugs that there might be, whether there's some unforeseen, clearance of turning a corner on one of the routes or something like that. So the sooner we can get that going, I think the more chance for success the implementation has.
Yes, Jim?
So I just want to be sure that we're taking a little pause in what I think we're setting up here, which is an either or, when I really think that what we should be talking about is an and. I don't want this proposal, I think we're hearing, there's generally a lot of support here. There's a lot of consensus here. We have that with our community. It's building with our city council. It's building with our town council. It would have been great if this all came together a month ago. I know for the calendars, that would have been perfect, but it didn't. And I think it behooves us to remember that the reason that we sit up here is basically to provide governance to really bring about the consensus of all of these different groups. If it was just about managing the Connect Transit organization, then there would be no need to have trustees appointed by the local communities to do that work. So I think, I really think there's an important distinction here about our roles and really the type of governance that we are being asked to provide. I have a lot of trust and a lot of support in the staff, but I also know that when you vote yes for something, the public is holding you to that yes vote. There is a trust component to that. You don't pass a budget and then spend the next 90 days changing the line items without an amendment. So this is not a budget, I know that, but this is a significant restructuring. I understand, and I haven't been on the board very long. I think I'm the newest member, and it's always, I'm sure, the newest member that's the one that's just like me. But the point here is, I think, again, it would have been great if this all came together a couple of weeks ago. It didn't. And I just think that we need to remember our role is really to seek the most consensus that we can. And I truly believe, because we have a top-notch organization, that we will be able to educate people. We will be able to get people on the buses and get them around town to where they need to go. I just think we need 3 more weeks to do the type of work that I've seen happen in the last 3 weeks. So I just, again, I appreciate all the opinions, but I think that that's an important distinction. And I'm a little bit worried about this idea of either or, because that's certainly not where my intentions are on this.
Well, the discussions we've had here have been, I think, very important, because this is a big issue, and I didn't know how this whole process would go at this time. It's clear that there's support for this program. It's down to the timing and when the appropriate time to actually place the vote. A comment on the first mile, last mile, just as a side note, is entirely separate from this COA. And that would be, it has, obviously plays into it, but it is not part of the COA at all. And as far as addressing it, is going to be an important matter, but that's just a clarification on there. In terms of the budget and how that will all be played into it, it's already in the budget that we're going to be reviewing and approving here shortly. So that's a known component on there. In terms of administering this thing as chair, it's a little bit awkward, but encouraging that there is the support and interest in it. And at this time, with 3 folks not standing behind it at this time, but seeing it weighing in as appropriate for our next board meeting, I would go ahead and want to entertain the motion for postponement and vote on that at this time. Is it proper way of doing that?
Yes, we have a motion and a second on, I believe, on the tabling
We do.
motion.
For
For
To
tabling.
table it?
There's a
For
motion-
tabling,
There's
yes.
a motion and a second on
Yes.
for tabling.
So at this time, I'll take all those those in favor of tabling the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Nay.
Nay.
Okay. So at this time, that motion will be tabled until,
You have a tie.
huh?
You have a tie.
No.
I voted in
You
favor.
voted to lay it over?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So that will be tabled until our meeting the end of this month. And now, let's move on to our next item.
Next item is a recommendation to support a grant application for replacement buses. There is a new pool of funding out from the federal government called Low or No Emissions, and we wish to go after funding for that program to procure 5 light-duty replacement vehicles. These would be procurement or paratransit vehicles. And also, we wish to utilize that, let me make sure here. to go after 5339 bus and bus facilities funding to procure heavy-duty buses as well. So we would ask for support to the resolution to apply for those grants.
I'll move approval.
Just question, is there any reason why we wouldn't?
No, we just, for the granting process, we need to prove to the FTA that the board is supportive
Okay.
of us
Okay.
going after that money.
Great. All right, thank you. I think it's important. Any other discussion or question, anything?
Can I ask a question? And then, Andrew, will we reach out, like, this goes to DOT, then will letters from congressional delegation be of benefit to this? Will we reach out to them to help do this, or does that have any sway in this?
We will look for support as well as we put it together.
All right, anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next up is an award of reconditioned engine and transmissions. Our 2011 low-floor Gilligs are reaching the point where their engines need to be rehabbed. We wish to go with Cummins Crosspoint to provide those engine reconditions, and the amount will be $214,445,028. We pretty much Cummins is the only engine supplier for public transportation, so sending it through Cummins is basically the way that we have to go, so we would ask that you grant approval.
I'll make a motion for approval.
And I'll second that motion.
Any discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
All right, next up is the annual renewal of our universal access agreement with Illinois State University. This year, we have negotiated a contract rate of $532,740,000 for the 740 for the fiscal year 2017. That is a 2.5% increase over the previous year, and we would ask that you move approval.
So move.
Second, and a question. The 2.5% increase, is that on the glide path that we want with ISU?
It is not on the glide path that we want with ISU, but in light of the fact that the state of Illinois is not giving them any money right now, we felt that pressuring them for a higher amount was not really in the spirit of our partnership.
And then I'll bring up a recurring issue I have with their printed materials. I think we're missing an opportunity by not having Connect Transit being branded more obviously on those materials. I don't think it sends the right signal to the student riders that there's a broader community and a broader system in this community for them to utilize. And I think I brought this up last year. I would urge that staff continue to work with ISU staff to try to work on branding those materials.
Yes, and we've been talking to them about that. Upon resolution of any route changes, we will be able to move forward with that.
Could I make a point that the language of this recommendation mentions the gold line, the blue line, and the first mile, last mile, which we do not know if that's going to be approved. I'd just like to make a comment that that's listed as some of the added benefits to ISU riders that we do not know whether it will be implemented or not.
Yep, and there is a possibility we'll have to amend this agreement, but at this point in time, this agreement needs to move forward to the ISU Board of Trustees.
So the motion would be for approval with a possible amendment?
The move would be for approval, and we'll bring an amendment back to you if we need to.
So we're not including that in the motion. My motion remains the same, then, to move.
Do we need to delay this for 3 more weeks?
No, we can't delay this one. It needs to go to ISU.
But will there be a presentation with this proposal so that the points that we've just talked about could be acknowledged? Because
Points with regard to,
the additional new routes.
yeah, if the new routes don't go forward, we would revert to old contract language for this.
And I understand that, but I guess my question is, when this agreement is presented to their Board of Trustees, or prior to that, will we have conversations that let them know that there may be some language that may have to be amended in the future?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question as well, and it concerns one of the addendums to the contract. There's a data security addendum, and my question has to do with the installation of electronic fare boxes and the fact that we're going to be using a cloud service to validate ridership information using that equipment. Have we looked at that? Is there any exposure that we need to ensure is addressed in our arrangement with the third-party contractor providing that fare box to the system?
Yeah, we've been talking to ISU about what kind of data they will actually transmit to us and what kind of data we will have. There will be very little sensitive data that we will have access to. We're entering into this so we can safeguard that, and also we, as per this agreement, will have regular data security checks as well. There is always liability when you're handling any type of sensitive data. We will not be getting, names, social security numbers, things like that. But there are a couple other things that we will be able to track. So we will be employing every possible safeguard on that. But we have checked with our liability carriers, and we are adequately covered.
And does the contract with the provider of the fare boxes speak to this at all? Is there any clause in that would provide a hold harmless to Connect? Because as I understand it, they're sponsoring that cloud service.
No, at this point, we do not have a hold harmless from GenFair. Oh, I'm just being corrected. I was getting a head shaking no. Now it's yes, we do have. With regard to their cloud service, we do have a liability waiver on that. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. It's just those types of clauses make me a little nervous when I see them in there, and I just want to make sure we thought through that and had addressed it.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question on this.
Yes.
And perhaps I'm not reading this correctly, but Article 2.2 states that the current and proposed comprehensive list of the hours and frequencies of service be provided, and that if any service changes, that be provided 30 days prior to the effective date of any change. And then regarding adjustments, that whether there's a reduction or increase or frequency, that then would be renegotiated based on Section 3.3. So I think what I need to understand now, so I'm not seeing language in the contract about any of the new routes, but I am seeing an appendix, and I guess what I need to understand is, are we executing this agreement with new routes that we haven't approved?
We are executing this agreement because there is a time component to this. It has to go to ISU. You cannot table this agreement. So,
To table, but let me
But with regard to that, we are advancing this with the understanding that we do expect to change the routes, and we expect that they, with regard to that which is on the ISU campus, would expect that they will look that way. However, if there is a change, we can come back and make an amendment to it. What's in there as a protector for ISU is if we do any significant decrease in the amount of service that we provide on campus, then it would be open to a renegotiation of the cost.
I understand that, but I think where I'm coming from here, this is dated April 18th, 2016 agreement. And on April, whether April 18th, whether today, I'm not suggesting we table this, and I understand we need to get this to ISU and the process that probably is involved to approve this. I'm just wondering why we wouldn't submit the current route service with this. When we initially had this dialogue, I thought, okay, well, I can get behind that. If it changes, we can submit a new one. But really, as I take a closer look here at 2.2, I really believe that this is stating that we should be submitting the current route schedule, and then when the route schedule changes, we should make a submission of that 30 days prior to the effective date of that change. I'm just curious why, I guess I'll speak for myself. I will vote no on this because I'm uncomfortable executing the agreement this way, because I do not feel that we are executing the agreement in concert with what it says here. So I will vote no. Thank you.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Since we changed that for ISU's purposes. They wanted to see that in there. So we are submitting this as current routes.
Okay, but I'm confused now, because we had a question up here about blue and the changes being in here, and I heard that they are, so.
Evidently, I was mistaken, so I apologize for that. The ISU, when I was involved in the contract discussions, we were talking about putting the new routing in there, and evidently ISU has asked that the existing routing be in there, so actually you're voting on what is current.
Correct.
Don, I thought you brought up the gold and the blue route in this.
It's in the resolution.
Okay.
Oh, but not an agreement. Thank you, Isaac. Okay. Any other questions, comment on that? Already had a motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Isaac.
The last item is the fiscal year 2017 proposed budget. I am not entirely sure what the board would like to do with this tonight. This does include the cost of all of our service under the route restructure, and that number could be up in the air, given that there might be additional changes coming. The plan as is in this. So there's a couple things we can do here. We do need to apply for our funding from the state of Illinois. That is actually late at this point. The state of Illinois has asked us to actually apply for the maximum amount of funding, because that way they don't have to do amendments and that type of thing. So they essentially just ask to put a placeholder in a miscellaneous line item. So if we need that money, we can use it, and if we don't, we just don't use it. So it is possible you could approve this budget and then come back and later amend it if there are changes, and then we could apply for our funding. Or, you could delay to approve this budget. So it's really up to the board what you want to do.
What is the date that the state is expecting us to have the figures to?
It was supposed to be in on April 1st. We have informed the state that will be late. Many systems have been late before.
Is there any potential for losing revenue on the basis of a late application for this funding?
Not necessarily a chance of losing revenue. It's just a matter of how fast it gets processed and how fast those checks can start coming.
Yes, Mark?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would just suggest that you go ahead and approve the budget as submitted with full funding for these extra initiatives. We do that all the time. We budget for things that we're never sure will happen, but you budget kind of worst-case scenario, and then obviously you can amend that budget later But
You
I
can
think
always
it's
come back and
prudent
change
to
it.
go ahead and include those costs in the budget, and that can be adjusted if things change.
I'd like to say we're budgeting at best case.
Well, yeah, that's certainly one way to look at it.
Yes, yes. Judy?
Bill, I'll put the motion on the floor that we approve this budget as presented.
Okay. All right. I would go along with Mark's opportunity that we have. We can amend it, and I think it's an appropriate budget to pursue at this time and approve. So all those, did you have some?
Can I ask
Yes,
a question?
yes.
In the memorandum here, I know it says it's not in the budget, no fare increases are included in the budget, but point 2, it says passenger fares are expected to increase 4.29% over fiscal year 2016. Just asking where those numbers are coming from, especially in light of the just recent report we got about how ridership was down.
We're expecting from the Sunday service and also from the route restructuring ridership increases.
Is the ISU also, isn't additional revenue?
And that's a separate item.
Yeah, that's separate.
And we are no longer leasing the property on Oakland?
No, we are not. We have ended that lease agreement with the city of Bloomington.
And so what are the prospects? Is it just going to?
We continue to work to sell that facility, and we will continue down that path.
Okay.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? All right. Thank you very much. All right, now we'll go into the general manager's report.
Okay, only a couple of items. One, our new fare boxes are in stock now. We have them on the property. We have started our training process with them. If you get a chance, you can come by the facility and take a look at them. They're pretty cool. So that is ongoing, and we will continue to keep you updated on how the rollout for that is going. Also, unfortunately, I see he just left, but we had our maintenance director resign recently, Carl Rokos, but we have a new maintenance manager named Jeff Douglas. In the next meeting, I will be sure to introduce him, but he kind of scooted out on me. So that is all I have at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we have any trustees' comments?
Just one.
Yes.
I just wanted to commend staff again for a great outreach process and a process towards working towards the COA and the route restructuring. And I hope that you'll be receptive to the trustees that need more information, and I hope the trustees are able to get that information in the next 3 weeks so we can come back and talk about this again. Thanks.
Yeah, last night's public hearing, and I think that was a good process for us. So I guess I have a question on that. And so we have the minutes. Are those shared publicly now, Andrew or Julie? Will we share those, or how will we get those out?
We can,
So
just like we normally do our regular proceedings that can be put up on our website. I have a listserv of people who like to have that information. I'll email it to them.
Okay, and one of the things I had heard last night, some of the social service groups were saying is, if you direct some of those comments to like Path has a way to communicate all that stuff out to like the human service groups. And then we had mentioned that we would be getting back to some of the people that had questions. Is that through, I have not had time to read those comments, I admit that, but is that how we get the responses back to those individuals, or will we be reaching out to the individuals since we have their names and their comments that had specific questions to us
We
yesterday?
typically reach out to them.
Okay.
Yes, Jim.
So I appreciate all of the efforts, and I will be sending an email by tomorrow morning that has, what I think are the potential issues for resolution. I stated earlier, and I'll state again, that I fully intend to support this plan in 3 weeks. So I'm happy to put into an email my thoughts at very high level. I'd like to see more work around the first mile, last mile, and I'm not saying that we need a a fully described option. I understand that that's not always possible, but I think it would be good to have option, A, B, C, and just scope out what they could look like, what they could cost, what the public could expect, whether or not we have, consensus with the union and with others around those options. So I think those would be important things. I'm not saying if we have to vote on this separately, I'm okay with that. I just want to see those options scoped out a little bit more. I'd also like to see if there are any other, and then I guess the next bucket would be, tweaks to existing routes that are here. So as Ryan said, the gold has only been and I know even on the maps we were looking at last night, I think there was still a change that had been made to the gold that hadn't yet been fully vetted. So I just think let's keep vetting the map as it is and find, as we found with the Phoenix Towers, a workaround in some cases if it's there. And then I would just say third bucket, bucket 3, probably not much here, but let's be sure we don't need any other new routes. So I'm really glad we have gold. But gold just came on the scene this week. And I think there's an important element of trust here with the public. I know this has been going on for a long time, and we can pass it to, we could have passed it tonight and then kept tweaking along. But what we put on the books first is important. It really does matter. It sends a message. So I would just like to be sure that there's nothing else out there, like that gold route, that we could add. So I'm happy to put that all into an email tomorrow. I'll send it to this whole group. And again, full transparency, I fully intend to support this proposal, but those are 3 things that I would like to see us work on over the next 3 weeks. Thank you.
Yes.
Just one other question. Last night, we were hearing from some of the drivers about they were alleging that maybe they had not been involved in any kind of discussion. And I just, for the record, for the general manager, if you could just share, especially just for Connect Transit employees, what opportunities they've had to kind of, over the last 5 or 6 months, to at least be informed or share information on ideas, in addition to the software programs and other things that Nelson Nygaard has used. So
we've
comment
had
on that.
Listening sessions, we've had meetings. We also had Nelson Nygaard spend a day at the facility talking to employees. We've definitely had opportunities, and we've continued in other meetings that we've had with our employees to solicit feedback on the routes and the changes that we've suggested. So we will continue to do that.
I think that's just good to get out there on the public record that, all that outreach has been going on with the employees, and thank you for doing that.
All right. Yes.
And I just had one comment.
Yes,
Bill.
John.
This is John Bowman, if I
Yeah.
could, and I apologize. If I interrupted someone, it's difficult for me to tell that from where I'm sitting. But just, this is from a rider usability standpoint. One thing I've noted with the fixed stop route structure is that some riders really would benefit from a courtesy stop at a traffic signal that the bus is going to have to stop for anyway, when the fixed stop sign is placed some distance from that location. So I would like to see some consideration being given to as a rideability feature of the system that courtesy stops that are identified by the rider when they board the bus would receive consideration when it doesn't impede the route.
Okay, thank you. I just, as far as this process we're going through with the COA, I'm strongly in support of it, and I'm anxious in a positive way to implement it for all the right reasons, because of the efficiency and the frequency that can be obtained from it, and it is dramatic, and change is tough. And I was hoping we'd come into this, be able to continue to move along. I think the step we've taken here now to review it again, and I feel confident approve it here in 3 weeks is a positive opportunity for us to nail it down and have consensus. I feel real strongly about that 4-3, 5-2, whatever the deal is, we need to be in strong support of this very dramatic process. And I think it's going to be terribly positive for our community. It's going to be positive not only in terms of riders, but for the taxpayers. And I want both councils to be in support and city managers, and I think this is going to be a good opportunity for us. And so the amount of change and opportunity that we've seen in the last several weeks is very encouraging, and I think we'll certainly see a good opportunity to pass this and move on with some great things in 3 weeks. So I appreciate the discussion we've had on this. It's been challenging and tough, but I see some great opportunity coming from it. And that's that. No need for executive session. Nope. All right. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
We have a motion? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
See.